Were you born to hustle or are you built to last? Or can we actually have it both ways? Today on the show, our expert explores how founders can find their purpose, fuel their creativity, and make it all sustainable. Expert Connections starts now. Everyone wants to know what's the secret to life. Entrepreneurs want to know what's the secret to managing through the chaos of entrepreneurship. Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm Julie Holton Smith. I'm excited to get right to our guest today. He is the founder of Exponential Life, Christian Ray Flores. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Julie.
So glad to have you here, Christian. I have been reading through your story and just absolutely fascinated the route you took. You are many times over an entrepreneur, among other titles. Why don't you first give us just a brief overview of who you are and what you do?
So I do a couple of things. I do digital media. So it's really more brand strategy. That's one thing I do. I I do performance coaching. I do philanthropy work in Africa, and we have an after-school academy in Mozambique. Those, I think, are the principal things.
Not small hats there for sure, Christian.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
wanted you to share that because I think you bring so much perspective from a variety of areas in the conversation that we're going to have today, focusing on founders, focusing on entrepreneurs, those involved in startups, and really, this conversation. So many people come to this show looking for guidance in different aspects of running their business. But one thing that I think may often be missed for founders in particular is really that focus on themselves. Why do you, Christian, feel that it's so important for founders to really take time to focus on themselves?
I just think that there's almost like this myth of the tech founder, of the startup founder in general out there. It's really more of a caricature than reality. That idea is that you are like this, the hustle culture. You don't sleep at night, and you do, like, code all night, and you become fabulously wealthy within months, and somebody gives you $10 million, and then it becomes $1 billion. All of that is just rubbish. Actually, statistically, it's just not true. It's true maybe of a very small minority of people. The most successful founders on average are usually in their mid 40s, and they have at least two or three failures under their belts. Look, the likelihood of you being the next Zuckerberg is very close to zero. You're just not that person. And that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And I would say, okay, so if the average founder has to go through some failures, and we all do, I've had a few failures myself. And the average sort of age where they start succeeding, really succeeding, is their mid 40s. You have to make it intact into your mid 40s, where you don't even lose taste for entrepreneurship in the first place, right? You're healthy enough, smart enough, have energy, expertise, wisdom, and you experience the sweet taste of victory and your success. And I would say that's my passion. My passion is to focus on founders and entrepreneurs in general who need to start taking care of themselves, play the long game, understand that none of this stuff is a sprint. It's actually a marathon.
Yeah, I think that that's such a critical point to bring up so early in the conversation because so many founders become focused on the purpose of the company they're building, the purpose of their startup, and sometimes disconnect from that purpose. I would say, almost in a way of they're self-sacrificing in order to put the purpose of
Yeah.
that company that they believe in first. But you say that purpose is really the foundation for sustainable success. The keyword there, of course, being sustainable. So, how do you define purpose when it comes to a founder and actually leading a business?
There's a couple of things. There's meaning and purpose, slightly different angles, probably dealing with about the same thing, right? I would say the meaning is, okay, do you have a clear idea of why you're here? Those are, I'm talking like metaphysical stuff, right?
Mm.
And I think most people just don't take the time to even develop that, right? Okay, why am I here? I mean, why does business exist? For example, these are like first principle stuff, first principle things, right? And now for me, those are important. Why? Because if you understand the meaning, for example, of business, the meaning of business is to serve people and solve somebody's problem better than anybody else, and that's why they give you the business. That's the gift of business, right? It's not one service for $1, because otherwise it wouldn't be. Why would somebody give you $1 if they're receiving $1's worth of? No, no, no. They're giving you $1 because in their minds they're receiving a little bit more than $1's worth, and that difference is your gift to them, right? So to me, that's meaning. Like, that's a philosophical approach to business that I think matters. Now, when it comes to purpose, in my mind, and obviously we can, argue about words. People put meaning in different meanings in different words. But for me, purpose is, what's your purpose personally, right? So like, if you were asking me, why do you do performance coaching, for example, right? Among other things. So what's the performance coaching piece? Well, I think that it's not for you to be successful. It's not for you to be rich. For me, the purpose of my purpose in coaching, is for me to be able to come into your life and be, a sojourner, perhaps, maybe a guide in some areas, but somebody who makes a difference, that redirects the very trajectory of your life. Without that element, right? That alchemy that happens when one person connects to another, and it's not 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 10. That is my purpose. That's what I want. And everything I do is sort of organized around those things. And the joy of that drives me, right? To get you that gift. And even how I select or accept somebody as a client is based on that, right? So if you don't want that, I don't want you as a client, basically, So if you're purpose driven that way, you do just higher level work, I think. And it's the same thing with entrepreneurship. Why do you do what you do exactly? Is it for status? Is it because you just love tinkering with code? What is it? And I think all of us need to go deeper and deeper and deeper on purpose. And the more we're connected to our actual pure purpose, the higher we can fly, the further we will go.
Okay, so here's a question for you. And this was a real life scenario, a meeting that I was in several years ago, where on this call, we had a variety of nonprofit organizations and as well as one for-profit organization. And there was
Yeah.
someone who leads the sales team for this for-profit organization who was on this call, and they were working on a collaboration. And at the beginning of the call, one of the nonprofits said, I want to make sure we're all aligned in our vision here. Let's go around the Zoom room, if you will, and everyone say what their purpose is here, what they're looking to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all around this room. And the salesperson said, quite honestly, hey, I'm here to make some money, and I'm here to help you all make money. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a disconnect in that moment because there was this thought, this sentiment that everyone was there just to do good. And one person said, well, I'm here to help you make money, and I'm here to make money. So what do you make of a situation like that, where for some people, I think,
Yeah.
maybe they are driven by profit? And that's not
Yeah.
necessarily a bad thing. So can you talk about that? How do you align when you have a team perhaps with multiple ideas of why each individual is there?
I
How do
just
you
I
align?
just I just don't think those things are mutually exclusive, in the sense that, I mean, again, it comes down to the purpose of money, right? What is money? Money is the currency of value. That's it. It's that simple. It's just a medium. That's all it is. So you can totally align that, and you can say, look, I want to add so much value. I want my offering, whatever that is, nonprofit, profit, for profit, to be so irresistible and so life-changing that people will give me the money. They will try to give me more money than I even need, right? that I have more product over, or ability to serve. And that's the obsession of solving somebody's problem at a higher level. And to me, doesn't clash at all. But with the caveat is, okay, so let's say you start a nonprofit, or you start a music career, or you write a book, you start a, yoga studio, and your main motivation is not the byproduct of value. And it's the change you want to be in that person's life. Versus, and you'll do work a very specific way if that's the thing, because you will overcome the inevitable chaos, the obstacles, the dysfunctions, the messiness of the team being very human and messy, the marketplace, lead generation, systems, all of those things, right? Company culture, all of those things. All of these are very, very, very hard things to do. That's why very few people succeed at this. If you look at startup, 9 out of 10 fail, right? Well, what's the difference? And I would say the difference is that if you're focused only on the byproduct of value exchange, you will probably not last. But if you focus and obsess over solving somebody's problem at a different level, you will last, and you will actually get that profit.
So let's talk about that. So you mentioned the messiness. When
Yeah,
we're talking to startup founders and entrepreneurs, it gets pretty messy at times.
yeah,
I mean,
very
I feel
much.
like if you're doing the right things, then it gets messy.
Yes.
So what are the steps to take when you're in the middle of the mess to make sure that you and your team are focusing on the right objectives to get you through that mess?
Well, I would take maybe even a step back before you even before you decide what to do with the objectives. Is that how do you get yourself in a place where you can even communicate that and see that clearly, right? And I'll tell you why. If you're biologically built, either to be creative or to be in sort of survival mode, right? You're building something, you're seeing, you're excited, you're motivated, you're leaning forward, or you're sort of, on your back foot because of this fire here, this fire here, this fire over here, right? And if you don't know how to get yourself from survival mode to creative mode, none of the objectives matter, especially if you're leading the organization. Why? Because your judgment is clouded, right? Because you don't see clearly. You're in sort of this compressed mode of survival rather than in growth mode. So how do you get yourself from survival mode to creative every day? To me, that's the building block, the first essential building block. And that is all about, emotional self-awareness, self-regulation, metacognition, lifestyle, rest, how much sleep you're getting, what are you eating, how are you moving, what are you learning, how do you know how to distress in the first place, right? Or do you bring all of that energy, that nervous energy, into the boardroom, and you make everybody else nervous, right? And it's infectious in a bad way. So I would say
Mhm.
that's the first step. It's how do you get from, I call that fuel. What kind of fuel you're running on? You're running on low grade fuel, or you're running on rocket fuel? I have a high performance car, right? And it only runs on premium. The car immediately responds differently if I make the mistake of getting regular fuel into that car. Immediately. Well, what if the fuel is not even normal, not high grade, but sort of polluted?
Mm.
I had one of my cars, cost me like $2,000 because the pump, it had polluted fuel. It just stopped. So
Mhm.
think about the analogy in a company, right? And the vehicle is the company, but you are the fuel. What do you run on? You are the person who defines the energy in the room. So you can go from low grade to high grade, but God forbid you go from low grade to polluted and just bad fuel in general, and the whole thing stops, gets paralyzed. I've seen companies over and over again just implode based on that one thing.
Yeah, it all comes back to what we started talking about in this conversation, which it starts with the founder. Of course, doesn't end there, but as
Yeah,
you How are you fueling yourself? Are you trying to get the job done on no sleep, which is
Hmm.
essentially a big component, an important component of our
Yeah.
fuel system?
Yeah.
So, what advice do you give to leaders who want to make that long-term impact, but they're limited by the messiness of those short-term pressures?
I mean, I think you need to learn how to be a high performance person, basically. And what is that exactly? How does that look practically, I guess, right? For example, I'll give you a very quick example. On average, we have maybe 2 or 3 hours of high impact work in us a day. That's it. It's diminishing returns after that, right? So first of all, can you get to that state of flow, high focus, high creativity, solution oriented, growth oriented every day? Like imagine if you can. That's one thing, right? Okay, so if you can and you have 2, 3 hours in the tank, what do you do? How do you organize your time? So let's say, for example, for me, I get up very early and have practices that are very specifically there to de-stress and get me into a state of flow, right? So 5:30 in the morning, I walk, I contemplate, I journal, I I do resistance training, and I learn something. This is all before breakfast. Then I have breakfast, and I'm happy, I'm joyful, I'm fed. Actually, not only am I fed, I make breakfast for my wife. She loves me, so I'm loved on top of that. Okay. And now I'm ready for the day. So I have 3 hours, maybe four of high grade. I'm ready to go, man. I can do amazing stuff. What if I start answering emails first thing or responding to an annoyed customer or an MIA employee in those 3 hours, right? What happens then? They're wasted. It's sideways energy, right? So you can block times for creative work. You have to protect those times, right? So, for example, I do creative work in the morning, and I do before noon, it's all creativity and creation. Afternoon, it's all communication. So that's one of my tricks, right? So there's all kinds of tricks like that you can do. And basically the idea is that you, Julie, are a creative and a creator by design. And how do you tap into that? And how that's a creative Julie person who can just change the world, show up with the top level grade rocket fuel for 2, 3 hours a day. And then you can just spend 2, 3 hours doing whatever, organizational optimization, delegation, automation, learning something new, whatever, communication, all of those things. That's fine. Julie, tell me, if you were like the state that I'm describing to you,
Hmm.
how would your work, your company, your impact change if that was a daily thing every single day? Well, tell me if you can
Yeah,
imagine that.
yeah, I imagine that all of those things that I think I don't have time for, the things
Yeah.
that I want to do, the things that I know will help grow the business or grow the podcast, for instance,
Yeah.
those are the things that I should spend the creative time on.
Yeah.
But how often for founders, entrepreneurs, do those things get pushed aside? Instead, as you described earlier, we're in reaction mode. We're playing defense instead of
Yeah.
playing offense.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
exactly so to answer that, I imagine that's one of the objectives that or objections that
Mm.
kind of unspoken right now that we can't hear from other founders. How do we shift from playing defense to playing offense, taking time for the things that maybe entrepreneurs think they don't have time for?
Oh, of course you have time. Of course you have time. I can guarantee you, if I follow you around like if I have like give you like a drone that follows you around, I can find a minimum of 2 hours that are wasted in your day. You know, like I know that I waste time myself. Like I can get stuck in doom scrolling on Instagram, for example, easily, right? And then you look at at the time and you go, what the heck happened, right? It's like, why am I doing this, right? Um, or just, being sort of numb because you don't know what to do because there's so much, right?
Mm.
Or watching TV. I mean, I know a lot of guys, I mean, in their 40s that, they can play video games because that's their escape. We all have these, escapist behavior preferences.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have anything that has to do with escaping from reality, that's where you find the time. That's it. And I can guarantee you that most of us can find easily an hour or two. Easily. It's
Did
not
you find when you kind of restructure your day, I'm
yeah.
not sure how, how long this has been for you, but did you find that you needed less of that escapism when you
Yeah.
were actually channeling your energy into the creative flow?
Well, you either escape reality, which is a bad sign, or you create reality. It's so much more fun to make reality, to have control, to have mastery over reality. And that's the shift that I want people to make. You're a startup founder. My goodness. That's your job, to create a new reality. It's your job. This is literally what you signed up for. It's create something out of nothing, right? But the process is so hard that in those moments of tension, of anxiety, you want to escape. So how do you train yourself? How to go from this survival mode to creative flow every single day? And that would be sort of the first thing I would attack, like with a fierce determination. And the next after that you can build on is how do you get to the direction of where you're going to want to go, right? It's always there are no solutions, only trade-offs. Solutions do not exist in the grand scheme of things. It's a bunch of little trade-offs. And if you focus on the right trade-offs, then you have a solution at the end, right? So the direction and the speed at which you operate and move in that direction, you need to decide what it is the other piece that I would attack for sure. And you see, the most brilliant founders, I think, they have this innate, this sixth sense of cutting through the unnecessary, cutting through sideways energy and getting that direction and speed, and just they just obsess over that. How do you get things done, right? How do you get things done? That's the second thing. The third thing I would focus on, and this is something I talk about all the time, right? So it's this internal sense of resistance that happens every time you have momentum. You'll immediately, your brain will attack you, right? And you'll go, what do you think you're doing? Who you think who you are? And so imposter syndrome, all of those fears arise, and none of them are actually real, which is good news in my opinion, but they feel so real, right? So the minute you have your first taste of success, or somebody gives you whatever, $250,000 as a seed round or something like that, and you hire the first person or the first 2, 3 people, and your product is on, but it's sort of clunky, the resistance kicks in. You immediately feel this pressure downward, and knowing how to do that, how to overcome that, that's the third piece that I usually sort of look at. And the fourth piece is, how do you look at what you're doing, not only from a perspective of now, what needs to be happening now, but from a perspective of a marathon, right? It's the dimensionality of life. And the typical, I think, mistake that people make is they become workaholics. They obsess only on the job. That's the only thing. And they think that's glamorous. It's glamorized, actually, as a matter of fact, in culture. And I think it's wrong. Um, and they immediately shrink from eating well, from moving, from spending time with friends, from their families, if you're married, with your kids, in that dimension that is actually massively important to your optimism. These are the de-stressors of life. These are the things that give meaning, actually, on a high scale. This is who you're doing this for in the first place. And those are the people that get abandoned. Your body gets abandoned, right? Your body goes, what the heck are you doing, dude? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fourth thing that I focus on is, I call it the radar, is being really aware of the dimensionality of life, and that you are building for the long run. It's a strategic way of building life. And yeah, maybe you won't, do all-nighters a lot, but you will get to a point where you get enough wisdom, enough health, enough optimism, enough quality of service, where your thing starts getting traction, right? But I'm a proponent of holistic success, not just financial success, or not immediate success.
And certainly, Christian, this is exactly why we also don't do this alone. Why
Yes.
founders and entrepreneurs need to have that circle,
Yeah, yeah.
that community around them, and coaches like you. I can see why your clients enjoy working with you, from performance coaching to other work that you do with your clients. We'll make sure to link to your website and your contact information for those who want to see more of the workshops you do and the other speaking that you do. Christian, before we go, you are working on a book, and I want to talk about this because I think, first of all, I read the first chapter of your book that you have. Share it online. Anyone can go right now and read the first chapter. Your new book is called Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America. And I think it's so especially timely right now. We don't get into politics on the show, but given that we just recently had a presidential election in the US,
Yeah.
this title really stood out to me. And first, let's back up and say, before we talk about the book, you have a really unique background of coming to the United States. Tell us first about your background and kind of your perspective, going into writing this book.
Well, it was born out of my conversations with my wife, Deb, and my kids, basically, right? And what happened is, we moved to the US. I think I was 30, I think I was 35. Yeah, I was 35 years old when we moved to the US about 20 years ago, 55 now. And I've visited many times. I married an American, so we would come for Christmas, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't really full immersion doesn't happen when you visit, even if you visit for like a month. So when we lived here, we started living here, and I would go places and visit places and talk to people and observe things from the inside. And I would tell my kids and my wife, this is amazing, this is amazing, this is amazing. And they would go like, this is sort of normal, right? And I go, no, this is not normal. So we'd go back and forth, back and forth. And Deb would go, and I would give him these very specific observations, right? About, the culture, the backstory, the history, right? All of these other things. I can probably go into that. I mean, I'll actually list them. Entrepreneurship as a baseline, that anybody can come to America and feel accepted as an American. um, Prosperity in general as this incredible first time in the history of humanity baseline for massive amounts of people. Um, Generosity, family values as a very core pillar thing, faith as a core pillar thing, freedom as a core thing, anti-fragility, and sort of this, this excitement about coming from the bottom and going to the top. All of those elements, all of these, it's almost like these threads in a tapestry. All of it combined with all kinds of historic events that happened, make America very, very unique, extraordinary. And I think Americans sometimes need to be reminded about just how extraordinary the country is for so many different reasons, not not by glossing over, national sins and crimes committed and oppression and slavery. None of those things are excluded from it, right? But the idea is that I think there's just too much America bashing going on, and people are demoralized. And I get an attitude when I see, especially young Americans, not appreciate it, not respect, not understand that they're inheriting something very valuable here. And the reason why they don't, which is totally fine, it's totally understandable, is that they don't have the perspective of what is the alternative. So in the book, I talk a lot about growing up, in I mean, this is my sixth country, this is my fourth continent, right? But growing up on four countries, three continents, I've seen military coups. My dad was in a concentration camp. I was a refugee at age 5. That's in Chile. I saw civil war in Africa, and I saw experimentations with Marxism in 3 different countries. So Chile, Africa. Then we went back to Russia. My mom's Russian, so I saw the realities of a socialist state, the scarcity, the poverty, the mediocrity, the oppression, the lack of freedom, this the no incredible censorship, right? The Just the cruelty and the human cost. Um, in person. I saw those things in person. And on top of that, I studied economics. So I have a master's degree in economics. I actually read Karl Marx and wrote papers on Karl Marx, and I saw the aftermath of that in real life. So I have all these layers and experiences that I think serve as good illustrations as in contrast of why America is such an exceptional, extraordinary country, and why more Americans should know the alternative. you know, 72% of the population on the planet today lives under tyranny, some sort of authoritarian regime. I mean, that's like 5.8 billion people today, not like 100 years ago, today. So anyway, so that's sort of the idea behind the book, and it was sort of, I wrote it as a coffee table book with lots of illustrations. It's like a mix of personal archival pictures and AI generated illustrations. So it's beautifully designed, and you can read it in maybe like 2-3 hours or something like that.
Well, I have to tell you, I read your book just days after the latest presidential election, and I thought, no matter where people's opinions fall on any side of the political debate,
Yeah,
um, I think just that reminder of who we are in this country and what we have, as you said, the perspective. It's easy to put the blinders on. It's easy to keep our heads down and
yeah,
just focus on ourselves and what we know in our small communities, but to lift our heads up and to look around and to really see. And to your point, as entrepreneurs, you work a lot of philanthropic notions into your views as an entrepreneur as well. And it's just, I feel, a reminder of what we have and what we have to give to others,
yeah.
instead of being just so at odds with each other.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have so much more in common than we have, dividing us. I mean, nobody ever agrees with even all the members of your family, okay? So, but we're family. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, it's an extraordinary country. I'm so grateful to be here. And I just want more people to understand and understand, not take it for granted because this is not guaranteed, right? You can lose this in 1 or 2 generations easily.
Christian, I appreciate your perspective, and thanks for sharing a little bit about your book. We will link to it as soon as it comes out and
Thank
make
you.
sure that everyone can have your
You,
contact
you know
information.
what? You can actually sign up for a wait list. And if you go to, I need to remember the URL, bigreasonstoloveamerica.us, there's like a landing page there, and you can just leave your email, and as soon as it comes out, we'll send you an email.
Perfect. I'm on the wait list. Audience, let's make sure you get on the wait list. You'll want to read this book. Christian Ray Flores, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Julie.
That is all for this episode of Expert Connections. We'll see you over in the next video.